We continue to get lots of calls in our offices across the state regarding the effects of the drought on our landscape plants. And so I want to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about that. One of the first things that I think we need to understand is the soil moisture. And we have weather stations throughout the whole state, and they collect data on a regular basis. And if you go and look back at the data over the last 2 years, last year and then this summer as well, you can see that we're still hurting pretty bad. Soil moisture index is measured at on a scale of 0 to 1, where 0 is completely dry and 1 is completely saturated. If you look at the data of the soil moisture index at 10 inches deep throughout the state, last year in July, mid to late July, it was near zero, at 0 or near 0 in most of the state. So soil moisture at 10 inches deep was pretty minimal. If you compare that to July this year, it hasn't changed a whole lot. We're still really dry deep into the soil. And even though with some of the rainfall that we've had has replenished some of that, much of the state is still pretty dry. So we need some more rainfall. Now, what does that mean to our landscape plants? Well, probably the most important plants in the landscape really are shade trees and ornamental trees. They have great value to the landscape, and they're more permanent and long-lived, long-lasting plants. And so we need to understand how to manage those properly. We're still getting calls, again, of trees dying in the forests areas as well as in our communities and around our homes. And some of that effect is actually from last year's drought, which we're seeing this year, and of course this year's drought has just added on to it and made it even worse. But the thing to understand is a tree has an interesting root system, and most people don't understand how that root system works. Most of the roots of a tree are in the top foot of soil, and that's contrary to what a lot of people believe. There are basically two types of roots on a tree. There's the primary roots, which are the large roots that grow in circumference as they mature, as they grow. Those are the anchor roots. That's what provides support to the tree. That's what helps move the water and nutrients up into the tree. And it also is a storage organ. It helps provide storage of the carbohydrates and the energy that the plant needs for other, later on in life. The other part of the root system are the fine roots that are the absorbing roots. And those are really tiny, probably less than 1/16 of an inch in diameter. And 90% of these roots are in the top foot of soil. And these absorbing roots are attached to the larger primary roots, and they typically grow up towards the surface of the soil where the oxygen is. They need oxygen to grow, and where most of the soil moisture is. So knowing that our soil's index, or soil moisture at 10 inches deep, is pretty poor, and knowing that our trees' roots grow in the top 10 to 12 inches of soil, that gives us an idea of really what we need to be doing to maintaining our trees. So what we often see at this time of year, or when we're in droughts, is people will put sprinklers up against the base of the tree and run the sprinklers at the base of the tree. That may be helping a little bit, but really not that much, because most of the roots grow out towards the drip line of the tree. So you come out to the end of the canopy, the end of the branches, most of our roots are going to be out here, and oftentimes, if the conditions are good enough, they'll grow 2 to 3 times beyond the canopy of the tree. So where we really need to be concentrating on when we water is out around the drip line and outer edges of the tree back to the trunk, but really that we're not worried about right next to the trunk. So this is where all of the roots are for these trees. Now when we water, what we want to do is water deep. So we need to run our irrigation long enough to soak the soil or percolate, let the water percolate down to about 10 to 12 inches deep. And then not water again for a little while, at least a week, maybe a couple weeks, depending on your soil types and the types of trees that you're trying to maintain. But the key is deep watering. We need to maintain that soil moisture 10 to 12 inches deep and keep it adequate enough for those tree roots to absorb it. Now, as we go into the fall and into the winter, again, trees are already stressed, and we definitely don't want to send them into the winter even more stressed. So watering well this fall, watering deep, will help a great deal. Dry soils and cold temperatures can be just as damaging to trees.